passing of my sister, I would always remember the kind words of comfort that people sent to me in this very difficult time. And I want to sincerely thank all of those who have done so and who have been to the wake or the funeral or have helped in whatever form. We have had the local government elections, and the results are out by now. And most people have been in the process of forming their opinion as to what took place in these elections. They have seen the traditional slate from GCOM, and they have seen websites managed by GCOM give information that is not factually accurate. They've seen this spin in the media, and some are clear about what took place in these elections, and others are not so clear because of the different sources of information and because of the spin surrounding what took place at the elections. So let me say right at the beginning that when we said the PPP won these elections massively, it was not a loose claim. It was not an irresponsible claim. But when I made that statement, I said, it is too early to speak comprehensively on the issue. When the numbers become clearer and the official declarations are made, you will hear from us further. And I think today we have had enough information out officially to talk about those claims that we made and whether they were accurate or not. Because there's been a lot of spin, particularly in some of the newspapers, about what took place in the city, Georgetown, Bartica, in the municipalities. But let's look at the results overall. The first thing I've seen is that the PPP in a statement said, we've won 48 of the 71 local government elections contested. 7 others were tied. I've now seen that figure reflected as 43. That is inaccurate. We hope that it is corrected shortly. From the information I got from Freedom House up to this morning, the number is 48 and remains at 48. What did not happen is that many areas where there was a no contest, like Crabwood Creek, or Blackbush Polder, or Kintyre Burlem, those were not included in the results, but they were part of the elections. It's just that APNU could not field candidates there. So we won those areas even before the election started. So they have to be included as part of the results. I've seen wrong numbers, that I was told that there are wrong numbers for Pomona Good Hope, that the Lagrange Means local government elections were wrongly declared. These should account for the difference, but I do hope that GCOM will move swiftly to correct these inaccuracies, and the newspapers that have been reporting them would report what exactly took place at the elections. That's the first point that I wish to make. So the PPP won 48 of the 71 areas contested, and tied 7 others. APNU, by contrast, won 15 of those areas. The PPP won more than 3 times of the areas contested, the local government elections, than APNU did. The second point is there were 1,166 seats contested. The PPP won, based on the figures that I've received this morning, 754 of those seats. APNU won 375, and the independent groups 36. So it means that PPP won 65% of the seats contested across the country, APNU 32%, and the others about 3% of the seats contested. I'm giving you this to ensure that you have an idea about, so you can draw your conclusions yourself about what we are talking about, this massive victory. Now, based on GCOM's number, we won 25,000 votes. We got 25,000 votes more than APNU. Our numbers are closer to 28,000. And this does not include the 4 municipalities, the 4 NDCs where there was a no contest. So take for Crabwood Creek, Blackbush Polar, Borlam, Kintyre, Bath Woodley Park. If you take 50% of the votes that we got in 2015, and you put it in the PPP column, we would be talking about something like 33,000 votes more than APNU. But as it stands now, leaving out those areas, even leaving them out, we won 28,000 more votes than APNU in these elections. The national elections, the difference was less than 5,000 votes. And what makes this particularly interesting is a difference of 28,000 votes when the turnout was under 50%. This magnifies basically the showing of the PPP. Because with only a 50% national turnout, 47% turnout, we won 25,000 votes more than APNU. 25,000 by GCOM's number so far, but if they add in some of the other things, we'll go up to, our numbers show 28,000. But so we, with just a 47% turnout, this is a massive victory for the PPP. It means that 28,000 more people showed up at the polls and voted for us than they did for APNU. And so, if you look at these 3 things, the first one is the popular vote, a massive victory for the PPP. The number of NDCs won, a massive victory for the PPP, 48%, 48 of them. And thirdly, the number of seats contested, again, a massive victory for the PPP on all 3 counts. On all 3 counts. Now, in areas that APNU did well, take for example, the city, New Amsterdam, some of the other areas, the turnout was below the national average. The turnout was less than 40% in those areas when the national average was 47%. So even in APNU strongholds, the turnout was low. if you look at, I'm not going to go into many more details because I think those three things have made our case alone. And no amount of spin can take that away from the PPP, that this was a huge victory for the PPP. Now, there are a couple of other things I want to talk about, because now that we have had the observers report the elections as free and fair, I'm hoping that somehow that we would have the observers now and in the future commit to signing the UN protocol for observing elections, where you have to, first of all, assess the period in the pre-election period, the state of readiness of GCOM, election day activities, post-election day activities, and then when the declaration is made, the reports that come out from the observer group will reflect the entire process. For it to be free and fair, you cannot talk only about election day activity. And anyone who says otherwise, including some of these observers, clearly do not know what they're talking about. Fairness, the fairness issue starts long before elections. So let us examine a few things that happened in these elections that we hope that will find their way into the observers' reports. First of all, they move to declare the haste at which the government declared some of these areas townships, Bartica, Letem, Mabaruma. These were made into municipalities. Now, we had a plan for years now. If you look at the project that we had with the CDB 10 years ago, we talk about developing townships across Guyana, Rosignol, Bartica, Parica, many other areas. But the reason we did not move swiftly to implement those, although that project that we started working on on townships with was maybe launched somewhere in 2004, is the reason we did not do that is because we recognized that several things had to be in place before you move several of these areas into township status, and that you had to go through a process to do this. So take, for example, Bartica. I went to Dog Point, an Amerindian community, and I asked, in fact, they told me, we were never consulted as to whether we want to be part of this township. But they are now part of the township. Then they told me that some people came and started measuring their properties. This was even before the elections. These Amerindian communities have about 5-8 acres of land, maybe a little bit more, in the Dog Point area. And they were told that they will now get only a 50 by 100 because they live in the town. And even if that doesn't happen, if they have to start paying rates and taxes because they live now in the township, they would probably lose those properties. They may not be able to pay based on the size of the properties. But the Amerindians, we've recognized for a very long time, the people who live in those areas, that they should have security of tenure over their land. So I want to know now what all those champions of indigenous people's rights are saying. Will the British High Commission and the American Embassy and the others talk about the lack of consultation with Amerindian communities that could put their land issue in jeopardy leading up to the elections, because it was part of this electoral cycle? And would the local NGOs also speak about this? Under the PPP, there was this, everyone used to talk about it, APA and all the others, Sidney Allicock, etc., about the free prior informed consent, FPIC they call it. Did they get FPIC from those Amerindians who were living in those areas that are now included in the municipalities before they launched those areas? Secondly, I saw Raphael Trotman going to 4 Miles and talking about having a meeting, no doubt with some APNU supporters, and they said 80% of the people there are non-Amerindians. I went to 4 Miles just recently too. The bulk of the people who there are Amerindians. They got their land title processed under the PPP. Now this group of APNU supporters, no doubt instigated by some of these ministers, these ministerial visits, are now questioning the people's right to their title in that community. But we have seen this happening even along the coast, where Basil Williams have gone to some communities in Region 2 and Region 5, and the result of it was people's land titles, etc., their transport is being challenged, their leases are being challenged. But coming back to the point, there was no consultation. I went to Hosororo, Barabina. Those places are now part of a tongue, and now suddenly they have not been consulted. I hope that the observers will put that in their report. The second thing is this: we have always recognized that incumbency has an advantage. That government, if they travel, etc., around election times or use the state media, they can get an advantage. And that, I believe, is pretty normal in a society. What we are opposed to is this flagrant violation, this flagrant abuse.